Many women who want both a successful career and children have to figure out how to have kids when they prefer rather than when nature dictates. Dr. John Couvaras is a reproductive endocrinologist. He is the director of an IVF in vitro fertilization lab in Phoenix, Arizona. He specializes in treating same-sex and straight couples who have reproductive issues. It is my pleasure to welcome Dr. John Couvaras back to Studio 4 to tell us more.
Well, thank you for having me.
Nice to see you again.
Thank you.
I said you treat same-sex couples, straight couples,
Everybody.
all of the above.
All across the board.
Mm-hmm. And last time you were here, you told me that women are born with something like 1 to 2 million eggs.
Well, actually, they start out with 7 million while they're inside their mothers.
7 million?
7 million. And by the time you get close to being born, you drop to 2 million.
Really?
And then for the first year of life, the ovaries will go through transition, and by the end of the first year, they go into a resting phase, and you only have 300,000.
That's not very many compared
That's
to
not very
7
many.
million. Why does it decline? Or is that too scientific?
It's too scientific. We don't have an answer for you.
Okay.
But when we're talking about fertility preservation, you can see that the body goes through enormous wastage. And so now a woman will be in resting phase until she hits puberty, and she'll have about 30 years of reproduction. And for every year, she'll go through each month about 10 eggs. So if you multiply 10 by 12 by 30, she's not going to burn up 300,000 eggs, is she?
I hope not.
Right.
But if you look at a female as she ages, you know, and you've told me this before, fertility declines.
Correct. So things change.
Yes.
So we're going along, and all of a sudden at 35, your pregnancy rates drop by half.
Okay,
And
so what happens to a woman who's 50 and gets pregnant? A lot. Do you know what I mean? Somebody, you say they're having another child.
And 50.
Yeah, and in good shape, all of that. Is it about that? What's it about?
Well, listen, 35, they drop by half. 39, they drop by half again. So now we're down to 25%. From 40 onwards, each year, you can almost imagine dropping 5 to 7%. So by the time 45 hits, the chance of getting pregnant is probably less than 5%.
Really?
So when someone says, I was 50, I had a child, they're either a complete far end of the spectrum, an anomaly, or they're using donor eggs.
Okay, so if you get out of university, want to have a career, pursue your career, be a lawyer for 10 years, and then have children, and by that time you're probably 35 or 40.
Correct.
What are your options?
Well, your options are to come to someone who's well qualified in dealing with women who are going to struggle. You can't just use a little bit of a pill or just do timed intercourse. You need someone who knows how to kind of optimize things.
Right.
35-year-olds are borderline. And what we tell people is if you're going to save your eggs for fertility preservation, you should consider saving them early. Right?
Oh, right.
A younger egg means a better outcome. An older egg, not so good of an outcome. And as we get older, although there's 300,000 eggs supposedly, and maybe you've burned up 80,000, something's changing, and the eggs go through atrophy. They just die, attrition. And so by 35, you might only have 100,000. And then we see this. We see the ovaries getting smaller and faded and harder to perceive the follicles, which are the fluid-filled sacs.
Okay, so a woman comes to you, she's 35, she's a career woman, she knows she wants children for sure.
For sure.
Husband 35, husband 40, husband 50.
She wants
Doesn't
children
matter.
now or in 5 years?
In 5 years.
I look at her and say, 5 years, you should save your eggs. Or if you're married, save the embryos.
Okay, and how do you do that?
It's in vitro fertilization.
Okay.
So we stimulate them, we take the eggs out, we grow the eggs into embryos, we carry them to day 5, and those that carry to day 5 show great viability, and they look well, and they freeze beautifully. Day 5 blasts, which is what they're called, they go through a freeze-thaw cycle almost as well as a fresh embryo.
Okay, so where do you keep them?
Oh, they're in liquid nitrogen and minus 200 and something degrees.
I see.
Yeah.
And is there regulation in the States and Canada about
Everywhere.
where the eggs are kept and
Absolutely.
whose eggs they are?
Absolutely. The regulation's super tight. We get audited once or twice a year, and I'm sure Canada has similar, if not even more stringent criteria.
Sure, because as a mother, you'd say, or as a potential mother, you'd say, is that my egg?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you want to make sure the labeling is good and there's some regulation.
Absolutely.
And can you tell once an egg has been frozen how healthy it is before implanting?
Well, you can't tell. This is the deal. If they survive the process, which means you take them out, you thaw them, and then you can see almost instantly, did that egg survive? Because they will actually have a strange look if they didn't, and you can tell instantly they don't transmit light, it died.
I see.
But if it looks like it survived, then what we have to do is we can't just let it sit there and fertilize naturally. We take a microscope with a very tiny, tiny, tiny glass needle, and we suck up one single sperm, and we inject that single sperm into the egg to assist fertilize. And then we put it away, and 24 hours or 20 hours later, we'll look at it, and we'll see if the DNA from the sperm and the DNA from the mother decondensed, and you see these two round balls occurring, and they're like two planets colliding. All of a sudden, boom, they go into syngamy. It's a Greek word, which talks about the blending and fusing, and talks about wedding, agamos, okay?
Agamos.
Agamos.
Okay, so you have an agamos.
Yeah.
You have an agamos.
You're having a marriage of these two DNAs.
Of the sperm and the egg.
DNA.
Okay.
And they come together.
In a dish. In
the dish, inside that one egg, and it just goes through syngamy, and then becomes two cells.
Okay, now the male, the sperm, is that frozen too, or is that?
It can be, or it can be fresh.
And so men, I'm thinking, probably have more sperm?
Oh, well, men have trillions of sperm.
I see. Wouldn't
Trillions.
you know?
Well, no, it's just we need a lot of sperm and a lot of wastage.
Right, okay. But so an aging male, point being, doesn't necessarily need to save sperm or worry about that necessarily.
Not as much these days. Let me give you the idea. A woman hits 35, and then she hits 39. A woman of 35 is the equivalent for a man of about 50.
Okay.
So people used to think guys didn't have to worry at all. But a guy of 50 really needs to think about it, because if you really want, just because you have a lot of sperm doesn't mean that the DNA inside the sperm, just like the DNA inside the egg, is good.
Sure, and some men, as you know, recycle, and some women recycle. So you get a younger wife who definitely wants children, and you have to do something about it. Dr. John Couvaras, our guest, he's a medical and lab director at IVF Phoenix, Arizona. He's a reproductive endocrinologist, and we'll come back and talk more.